Hey, come along with me. Let's look into a 1987 Ford Bronco that's pretty darn original. Okay, JB Broncos are all the rage these days. There's very old ones, there's brand new ones. This one's a little in between. What year is this Bronco?
This is a 1987.
Okay.
In the history of a particular group of cars inside of a make like the Bronco, usually, not always, but usually the cars get better in the middle, and then by quirk of fate, they end up being not so hot at the end, but their developmental problems, mechanical problems, that sort of thing are all pretty much worked out. Ford is huge on this sort of thing. They do not want to lose the customers that they have by having reliability problems. So they've been, throughout their history, especially in the truck line, they've been very much conscious of the fact that if you're going to buy another Ford next time, you better not have trouble with one this time.
Right.
So they understand that, and they're very much conscious of that. So when the first cars came out, they're charming, they're wonderful, you ought to know you have one. And they drive surprisingly well, but they're also a brand new issue. And right now they're struggling with the new Broncos for that very same reason, because they don't want to bring something out that has chip problems or reliability problems and that sort of thing. So they're going to stall the car in its introduction in mass until they get their act together. And that's a very good thing, because if you look at a historical perspective, you don't remember when you got the car. You only remember you had trouble with it or you didn't.
Right.
And they keenly are aware of that, and they have been for a long time. So by the time the 87 comes around, it's not quite as jouncy. It's a little more comfortable. They have an automatic four-wheel drive on the dash, push button that you can push instead of fumbling around with levers and things, which some people like. I personally do not like it. For the 99% of the time you drive the car, you're just fumbling with the stick on the floor. You can't get people in or out of it easily sometimes. So it's kind of and people complained about it, and they, the era of electronics was upon us. So they said, well, look, let's see if we can do this electronically, and this one fortunately was equipped that way.
Very good. So let's kind of walk around and just point out this is an XLT model according to the emblem on the side there.
Right.
It's got two-tone paint, which really is sharp. It
really helps it, because all Broncos pretty much look like the box that another car came in.
Yeah, right.
And so they run the risk of being a little bit boring, a little bit non-aerodynamic, and of course they're not used in that way. They're supposed to be used in the out of doors, in difficult situations where driving is difficult and rocky, and that kind of experience, camping and going in the outback. So they're not really designed to be a street car, but they need to be able to function on the street. And so by the time they got to 87 from 66, they had worked out a lot of those things. Sure. People had different requirements, and they wanted both, really.
Yeah. And, what engine do you have in this thing?
This is the 302 that was also really called the Mustang 302, if I recall.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so it has that good association as the
5.0 liter.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Yes. And it has a fair amount of power, and to the extent that you need it. Right. You got some power there, but it's not. You don't get dizzy watching the gas gauge.
Sure.
It actually gets pretty good fuel economy, and the thing I love about it, and after driving it for quite a while, is that it's so easy to drive. I mean, being a shorter wheelbase car means that it maneuvers so much differently than a pickup truck, for instance, that has a longer wheelbase, and it takes
very maneuverable.
Yeah, you need the World's Fair to turn one around. This thing will turn on a dime, and keep its balance. It's made to be in a very precarious situation. Obviously, a lot of testing was done to make sure that it would survive that, and it's very, very capable in a lot of different ways, not just in crawling over rocks.
So it's got creature comforts. You got
it does. Very comfortable
steering,
car.
Automatic.
Air conditioning.
Air conditioning.
It's extremely quiet. You're not really aware of the fact you're in an 87 until you pull up the light and everybody's going like this, and what's wrong with those people, and then you realize you're in something that's become kind of an American icon.
Right.
And rightfully so. They've earned their stripes.
Well, let's look inside a little bit more.
Okay.
It's got a A blue interior, which you don't see nowadays very much.
No, you don't. And most of the original interiors are long gone.
Yeah, right.
Obviously, because this doesn't have a huge number of miles on it, the interior is in excellent shape. Very unusual. It's a cloth insert original. That was, I believe, part of the XLT package.
Mm-hmm.
And these have survived. One of the ways you can tell mileage for real, other than what's on the odometer, is to look at the condition of the upholstery. And as we talked about in an earlier episode, you look at the heel pad underneath the brake, which is still in excellent shape, and in the left-hand side of the brake pad will be worn off if it has a lot of miles. Clearly, that's not the case.
Yeah, so it shows a little bit of the sun in Arizona because this is an Arizona car, right?
Exactly, and that's part of the reason that this car is more valuable, because it lived in Arizona. It's born and raised, sold new in Glendale.
Yeah, you see all this old original stuff, and there's not a speck of rust on anything.
No, there's very little humidity in Arizona. Yeah. And so you don't have the creeping crud. Yeah. Right. While you're sleeping, it's weeping, you know. And out here, we just don't have to concern ourselves with that. So that's wonderful. You don't even have to look underneath an Arizona car, because you know the paint will still be shiny, but it's not going to encounter that huge amount of humidity or salt on the roads, even worse. So you're not going to have those experiences. Yeah. Wow, that's really great. It looks like brand new tires, it seems like. Yes, it does. And those are the right wheels, aren't they? Another indication of age is, how does the door shut? If the door requires you kinking your back about 8 feet and throwing it as hard as you can, it's probably not in good shape. But if your door shuts like that, you can pretty much. I haven't touched that door. I have not adjusted it. Right. That's just the way it came. It's just the way it came to me. And of course, the driver's side or the passenger side is even better, because of course nobody's been in or out of it. Right. Probably nobody's ever been out. The passenger seat's virtually flawless. Right. The back seat's still good, in excellent shape, as you can clearly see. And it's a removable seat. It's a removable seat, so if you want to haul things, you can just take it out. And in fact, when we got the truck, it was out, and we put it back in. Okay. Thank goodness the guy saved it, because a lot of this stuff gets discarded. Yep. You know, they just quit using the back seat, so it just gets thrown away, and now you don't have one, and you can't replace them. They're not out there. Right. There just aren't. And that's an electric rear window, isn't it? Exactly, and it works really well. It works from the dash, so it's really kind of a security item for the car. You can't get in the back of this car unless you have access to the dash. And well, let me see you put the window up. You're going to dare me? Yeah, because not everybody's back window works on these. Most of them do not work. That's correct. And just like that, wow, that's fast too, actually. Now I rest my case. Yeah. That's very cool. You know, while you're in there, let's hear it start up. Can you mind turning the key and just starting this baby? Yes, after all that, it actually runs, okay? We didn't tow it here? No. Very nice. All right. You know what? You can pretty much tell through the RPM range that there's no missing, there's no skipping, no hesitation. Hey, what do you say we go for a ride around the block? You want to actually drive it? Well, I'm happy to ride. You drive. Okay, we can do that. So you were just telling me you did a kind of a spark plug change, kind of a tune-up, just to make sure everything was maintained? Exactly. When cars sit for a number of years, like this one has, you can count on a few things being true. And of course, like we talked before, we always put penetrating oil and ATF in all the cylinders and let it sit for a couple of weeks. Then we very carefully rock the motor back and forth by hand, not with a starter motor, to make sure that those rings have been reseated successfully with that, because they're brittle. And if you fire the engine and they're stuck to the cylinder wall, they're going to crack and break. And now you wonder why it doesn't run, and it smokes and acts up. But that's why you actually did a huge amount of harm just by getting excited and trying to start it too quickly. So
Right.
we went through the procedure with this car, and then we changed the plugs, the plug wires, points, anything that was of a disposable nature. We made sure we replaced, and but we wanted to keep all the good stuff because there's a lot of stuff in this. Originality is a big deal. Always has been, always will be, especially with old trucks. 80s vehicles are now on the endangered species list, so when you go to even a wrecking yard, they're gone. They're just
Right.
gone.
You
They've
don't
been picked
can't even
over,
get
or
used salvage parts anymore, hardly.
yeah, it's very difficult.
Yeah.
You can get more things for a 60s car than you can for an 80s car, ironically.
Yeah.
Because now the demand is raised, and the reproduction, people are aware of that, so they're going to go back in and reproduce things that are not around anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not true of 80s cars.
Right.
The good thing is that they share parts with pickup trucks.
That's correct. That's an F100 or 150 on this thing.
Exactly.
Have a lot of parts shared.
Exactly. So you can still find good parts on pickup trucks that cross over to the Broncos.
Right.
It's not always, behind the back seat, it's all Bronco.
Right.
But in front of the seat, it shares a lot of parts with the pickup trucks. So
yep.
Those are fairly common, and there's still a few of them around, and increasingly those are getting restored.
Sure.
For obvious reasons, because they're becoming very valuable.
Yeah.
And they're very simple, and people are tired of chips that don't come up, and chips that die, and chips that can't be replaced. And,
interesting that your heating and air still has the factory little notice sticker.
Exactly.
It's not even meant to be permanent at all.
No, it isn't. It's really just to inform the
here
original owner.
All these years later.
Exactly. So the little kind of things of that nature tell you about the history of a car without really even knowing.
But it's amazing for something. Again,
really.
Obviously, it's been used in its life, but it's still really quite original.
Well, I think the charm of the 70s, 80s, and even the 90s Broncos is that they're much more usable in a modern setting. I mean, they came with air conditioning.
Right.
So now your passengers, I live in Arizona, having a car without air conditioning does not happen. I mean, you're going to drive them. We drive them in the fall and winter, but then when the summer comes along, we just have to park them.
Yeah.
Not so with an air conditioned car, so you're not paying the same penalty, and it gets a lot more use, and that's important. People want to use these cars now. They don't just want to stare at them.
Right. Yep.
They want to get them out and use them and drive them around, and the smiles you put on people's faces just incredible to experience. If you haven't had that experience, I can tell you, you get these wonderful comments all across town, big thumbs up, and smiles on people's faces. It brings back some part of their history or their family that may be gone now, and now they're revisiting it when they see a vehicle of that period, and it's actually in motion, and the person is actually driving it. It's not at some car show where only a tiny fraction of people are going to appreciate it.
Right.
And people at car shows have already seen it, 15 of them.
Yeah, that's right.
They look at every car in this era and earlier and even a little later and say, wow, that brings back memories of fill in the blank.
Yeah.
You can't replace that. And as a driver and as a person who maintains them and takes care of them, you get that collateral benefit is unbelievably hard. It's hard to describe to people. But if you're having a bad day and you go across town and you put smiles on 10 people's faces, it's a wonderful feeling. It really is.
Sure. And I noticed that it's got the gauge package, which I'm sure is part of the truck heritage.
Yes.
With the Ford, so you have the tachometer and 4 additional gauges besides the speedometer. That's cool.
A lot of the stuff was standard by then. Like you said, the 4x4 electronic controls are a new thing in this era. And like I said, I personally do not like shifters on the floor. They're cumbersome. You can't get across here. You can't put anything there.
Right.
There's a lot of kind of collateral problems that people don't really think about. And some people love them and they want to have that stick down there. I personally do not, but Ford was smart enough to know that to offer it as an option and let people decide for themselves.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a fun vehicle to drive around. Like you said,
Yeah.
I'm just my ride along with you. I'm agreeing. Easy to deal with driving around town. It's not like you have to be in the woods on a fishing trip
No, and
to
it's
enjoy
not
it.
noisy and
Right.
jouncy like some of the earlier, like Jeeps. The early Jeeps are just,
Yeah, they're very stiff and very short wheelbase. That made it
yeah,
really
and
tough.
they beat you up pretty badly.
Yeah.
If you're driving on a daily basis. They were not designed to do that, but if you were to choose to do that,
Yeah.
there's a real penalty to pay.
Yeah.
So I mean, Ford got it right with this car because they knew people would drive it in town, that they would want to do both.
Yeah. Very good. Well, thanks, JB.
You bet.
Thank you for joining me again. Another little automotive adventure. We'll continue to keep you posted on projects and things, but I thought it'd be a good departure just to talk about this old Bronco. And I guess we figured out it was maybe 35 years old. It's still old. Not as old as some of the other stuff we look at, but it's still old. Thanks again for joining us.